Hello friends, my name is Miss Laura and I'm coming to you today from the Abington Community Library. This year, 2020, is an important year because we are celebrating 100 years, the 100-year anniversary of the 19th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, which gave women the right to vote. So the Lackawanna County Library System is celebrating that important milestone this year by doing some special events and especially some virtual story times. So every Tuesday, starting this Tuesday, September 8th, a different library in the system will be presenting a special story time. And so make sure you're following all the libraries in Lackawanna County on Facebook so that you don't miss any of those special story times. So I'm going to be reading a book today, and it's called Elizabeth Leads the Way. It's about Elizabeth Cady Stanton and the right to vote. It's written by Tanya Stone and illustrated by Rebecca Gibbon. So we're celebrating this important anniversary this year because women in our country weren't always allowed to vote. It took years of people like Elizabeth Cady Stanton working very hard to allow women to have the right to vote in our country. Our country is a democracy, which means that we're governed by the people. But for a long time, there were only men that were able to vote people into office and make the rules. And so we are celebrating this year that important right. So I'm going to start reading this book, and we're going to talk a little bit about Elizabeth Cady Stanton. And here we go. What would you do if someone told you can't be what you want to be because you're a girl? What would you do if someone told you your vote doesn't count, your voice doesn't matter because you're a girl? Would you ask why? Would you talk back? Would you fight for your rights? Elizabeth did. All of these things used to be true back when Elizabeth Cady was a girl. And all of these things might still be true today if Elizabeth hadn't led the way. She was only 4 years old the first time she heard someone, a woman, say life was better for boys. The woman had come to visit Elizabeth's new baby sister. What a pity she's a girl. How could anyone look at a little baby and feel sad? What could be wrong about being a girl? She was 13 years old when her father, Judge Cady, told a woman whose husband had died that the farm she had spent her whole life working on would be taken from her. Without a husband, the law stated, nothing belonged to her. Elizabeth was horrified by this unfairness. She said the law should be cut out of every book. Judge Cady told her that wouldn't change anything. The law was still the law, and only men were allowed to change laws. Preposterous, she says. That means, that's crazy. She decided right then and there that she could do anything any boy could do. She jumped over high hurdles on horseback. She rafted across a raging river. She won a prize for being the best in Greek studies. Her father was proud, but he worried about his strong-spirited, rule-breaking daughter. You should have been a boy. He knew how much easier her life would be, but Elizabeth wasn't interested in easy. At 16, since colleges would not let girls in, Elizabeth begged her father to send her to a girls' school to continue her learning. So while most young ladies were getting married, washing dishes, doing laundry, having babies, Elizabeth was studying religion, math, science, French, and writing. Several years later, Elizabeth Cady met Henry Stanton. He was an abolitionist, speaking out against slavery. He understood how unfair it was for people not to have rights or power. He did not laugh when Elizabeth talked about freedom. He did not laugh when Elizabeth said all people should be able to live life the way they choose. And he did not laugh when she told him she would add his name to her own, but would not give up hers just to marry him. So Elizabeth Cady became Elizabeth Cady Stanton and had babies, cooked meals, washed dishes, mended clothes, and did laundry. She loved her babies, but she did not love cooking and dishes and mending and laundry. One day, her friend Lucretia Mott invited her to a lunch. Lucretia had always shared Elizabeth's ideas about all the things women could do and would do if only they had the right. The other women at lunch shared them too. Elizabeth got fired up. She proposed they hold a meeting. A meeting that would gather together lots and lots of women from all around to talk. But what would they talk about? There were so many things that needed to be set straight. Married women couldn't own property or even the money they worked to earn. Elizabeth had learned long ago that only men could change the laws because only men could vote. That was it. That was the one thing that could change everything. If women could vote, they could help change all kinds of laws. This idea was so shocking, so huge, so daring, Elizabeth's friends gasped out loud. If they were flabbergasted, what would other people think? Elizabeth did not waver. She knew voting was the only way to make a difference. Her battle cry for the right to vote rang out. Have it we must. Use it we will. Even her Henry thought she had gone too far. But on July 19, 1848, when Elizabeth arrived at the meeting place, she saw for herself that she hadn't. The small church in Seneca Falls, New York, was filled with hundreds of people. Elizabeth read aloud what she and a few of the women had written together. Their declaration of rights and sentiments challenged the idea from the Declaration of Independence that all men are created equal. When she was finished, she looked into the faces of the crowd and waited. The room was silent. Then a rumbling began. It grew louder and louder and louder as people argued whether or not women should be allowed to vote. Word of the meeting spread like wildfire. Newspapers across the country scolded Elizabeth for her boldness, but other women joined her in battle. The idea of women having the right to vote began to buzz in the ears of people from Maine to California. Elizabeth had tossed a stone in the water, and the ripples grew wider and wider and wider. Many said Elizabeth must be stopped, but she was unstoppable. She changed America forever. And that is the end. There's an author note at the back of this book that tells us a little bit more about Elizabeth Cady Stanton. She never limited herself to championing only women's right to vote. She was passionate about girls' sports, property and child custody rights for women, coeducation, equal wages for women, reforming divorce laws, all kinds of things. And the interesting thing to note about Elizabeth Cady Stanton is that she died on October 26, 1902, and it took 18 more years after her death for women to get the vote. The 19th Amendment went into effect in August 1920, and that was 100 years ago. Remember at the beginning I said, since this is the year 2020, we are celebrating 100 years of women having the right to vote. And Elizabeth Cady Stanton, even though she worked so hard for women to have the right to vote, she never got to vote herself. But it's because of her and other people like her that stood up for that right and worked hard to get that women are allowed to vote today. And now today, you just have to be 18 years old and a citizen of the United States, and then you get to vote too. And I'm sure there's other ways that you can vote and make your voice be heard even before you're 18. And then when you're 18, you can officially vote in our elections. So I hope you enjoyed this book, and I hope you check out some of the other cool virtual story times that are coming from the other libraries in Lackawanna County Library System.